community, learning, discussion, respect, integrity, truth, science, and discovery. Welcome to my Paranormal Soapbox. Hello, and welcome to my Paranormal Soapbox. I am your friendly neighborhood ghost hunter, Justin Brown, and I present to you episode 21 concerning trigger objects being used in your paranormal investigation. Before we get into that subject matter, I would like to introduce the chat moderators I have for this evening, Missy Vastine and Jessica Bias. What's up, ladies? How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I am dealing with some challenges this week, but nothing that I don't think I can handle. I hope I'm confident when I say that, but I feel like I am. My instinct says I am, but we have this world largest ghost hunt shenanigans going on this weekend, so it's making it extra little stressful leading into that. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, I'm ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
All right, that's all I can ask for, right? So how's Jess?
I am doing well. How are you? Well, you just answered that. Never mind. I was distracted.
I'm hanging in there. Everything's good on the homestead. All the kids are healthy. Wife is healthy. The 6-year-old boy had dental work today that went smoothly, so I can't complain too much. But hopefully things will get finalized and ironed out leading into Saturday, and we should be good to go. So, are you ready to tackle this topic for tonight?
Let's do it.
All right. So, guys, if you don't know the drill by now, this is my Paranormal Soapbox. We discuss paranormal topics voted on by the paranormal community. This week we have trigger objects. If you are a first-time viewer, how this show works is if you have a question for me or a comment or an opinion about what I'm talking about or about the topic in general, we will get to your comments and questions periodically through the show. Jess is monitoring YouTube comments, as you see on the screen. Missy is doing the Facebook comments. So here in a few minutes, we will shout everybody out that's commenting. We will engage your questions and comments accordingly. Okay, so please do that. Trigger objects, it's a pretty, I want to say, hot topic in the paranormal field. It's something that's been used for very, very long time. It's probably since the inception of paranormal research. I'm going to imagine all the research I've looked into suggests and tells me that trigger objects are one of the main sources of investigation when it comes to trying to elicit and incite paranormal phenomena during an investigation. It seems to be, trigger objects seem to be the center of phenomena in general when reported from people that have the emergent phenomena that happens in their homes and their businesses and their lives, and throughout. The trigger objects have a large spectrum of what it could be. It could stem from an item, a person, a song, certain words being spoken, all kinds of things. Anything can be a trigger object. It could be, speech even. It doesn't have to be an actual object. We're going to talk about a lot of these things, but I think we'll start off the show by saying that a lot of people use trigger objects because not only is it common sense, but it's something that we ask, again and again in the paranormal field. What is it that makes spirits, maybe they're not spirits, maybe there's something that we don't understand, what makes this disembodied intelligence or this entity react, do things, that we perceive and experience throughout our lives and on investigations? A lot of people believe that objects are the center of it all. It could be a haunted object. It could be an object, stimulating the activity. We use objects that appeal or could appeal to, a specific person or a range of people. A lot of people use tobacco. A lot of people use alcohol. A lot of people use objects that a lot of people are familiar with and that enjoy. It makes sense to me that people will try to do this. And the main reason I think of is a lot of people believe that people stay around and don't pass on to whatever you believe is, after life after death, is because they're clinging on to things, the things that they loved and meant something to them while they were alive. So if that's true, maybe we can come up with things that they still want to cling on to. They still want to hang around for. It could be a picture of a loved one. It could be an item from a loved one. It could be a substance like tobacco, alcohol, like we suggested. It could be a part of a place where they resided and lived and have memories of. It could be a whole bunch of things, right? So that is something that I think we need to really, really research, and it's very, very important. But what we'll also talk about is kind of like the trends and the cliche trigger objects that you see in the paranormal pulp culture, and that I observe, and what I think about those things as well. Now, if you noticed, if you looked at the thumbnail to this video, you see a Boot Buddy, which is something that Ghost Stop sells that kind of give entities something to interact with. Like, a lot of people believe that children's spirits exist, and if you put dolls and toys and teddy bears out in the area where they are, they'll interact with them. And I find that fascinating and almost like a cliche now. A lot of haunted places you go into, they have dolls set up. And a lot of people believe that dolls are houses for entities to possessed almost in the way, or they inhabit the dolls in a way. And that belief goes back far, 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 far beyond any of us watching this video right now. And I want to know from you guys, do you think the dolls, the bears, the toy trigger objects being used in these locations, either by the location owners or by the people investigating, do you think that has become cliche? Do you think that that's become just an archetype of, all paranormal investigation? I don't know if archetype's the right word, but it seems like it's a reoccurring theme. People just, put dolls, put toys, things that roll, balls, things that little children can play with. That seems the most popular trigger object that I've seen in these locations. Do you think that these are effective? Have you had experiences where they interact with them? Were you able to document these things? These are the things I want you to let me know, and we'll discuss on the show tonight. Do you have any ideas for trigger objects that are not typically seen? Do you, if so, what are they? What happened with them? What do you think about trigger objects in general? All these things I want you to throw at me through the course of this show, and I will get to here momentarily. My personal experience with trigger objects have been limited. I do, on occasion, put things in the area if there's not something there already. A lot of times we'll use photos of loved ones. Sometimes people believe that their haunting stems from people they know and their family, friends, so on and so forth. So we'll use photos as a trigger object or a way to channel the entity that we're trying to connect with. I have seen Missy use cigarettes. I have seen people like Scott Carter bring in dummies. He will bring in things associated with the history and the claims of the haunting. For example, he dressed up a doll to look like a nurse for Waverly Hills. He's dressed the doll up to look like a nun, I believe. Several things that he does. He's brought in nooses to places that have stories about hangings. Okay? And a lot of these things that our group does is try to stimulate activity, try to incite it, try to make it happen, either in a positive way or maybe not a quite positive way. And presenting a noose in a location may not seem like a positive thing, and generally I don't think it is. But whatever the case may be, we do these things to see if it has any effect outside of our normal inquiry about, hey, is there something here, so on and so forth. You may even see it as a form of ITC in an indirect way. What do you guys think? We're gonna switch back to the comments here, and we're gonna start shouting you guys out, saying what's up, and then maybe you guys have already started a conversation or asked questions. Who wants to go first with that?
I will. Sam's on. Glenda, Truth Paranormal. Landon, Deity, John, Scott Carter. Christy. I think that's it. And Mozart, he had a question. Could a trigger object be a person?
Absolutely. I think that people are most commonly the trigger objects in certain situations that people don't normally think about. But yes, I definitely do think trigger objects can be people. And an example of that, okay, an example would be somebody calls you, they have a haunting going on or alleged haunting going on in their residence. They think it's a loved one. And so, or maybe they think it's somebody who used to live there. In the case that if it's a loved one that's passed, the people that's the family members there are trigger objects. They are what the entities are tied to, and they are the reason why they are there, haunting the place. So that's a given. So I believe that people are the trigger objects. For things that are outside of family members and friends, I think spirit mediums, psychics, and other people with abilities can be trigger objects. So that's pretty self-explanatory.
Sure. Truth also said that he uses cigarettes, but it gives him an excuse to smoke.
Miss, I think that's the exact reason Missy does it. Am I right, Missy?
Most times.
What was that?
Most times, yes.
Okay.
But that's it. And YouTube.
All right. Well, thank you everyone on YouTube for joining us tonight. Keep those comments and questions coming. I would rather spend this time answering your questions than trying to figure out things to say this whole hour. So help me out there. Missy, go ahead and shout out everybody on Facebook. So let's say hi to them.
I got Christina Cano. I've got Sandy Griffin. I've got Danetta Goldtrap. Derek Schreiber, Chiefland Paranormal. Christy was watching. John Cahill. I've got Danny Zatola.
He's a camera guy for Elite Paranormal
EPS.
Society.
Right, and RJ is watching.
Sweet. What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us. Any questions so far on Facebook?
I don't really have any questions. Derek said we should dress the doll up as a hooker for the jail this weekend.
No. Christy has a question. She says, what about a certain date?
Okay, she said the only thing I can think of is the song I would listen to over and over again, thinking about a certain someone, and then having that exact song come on my phone out of nowhere while I was thinking of him.
Okay. I'm actually seeing a comment by Christy at 8:14:35 2 minutes ago saying, what about a certain date can it be a trigger object?
She's switching back and forth, so I don't know if it's on YouTube or Facebook.
It's on Facebook. So I want to address this because that is something that I believe is a trigger object more times than not. I believe that certain dates can go back to, can harken back to certain events that can reoccur on certain dates. And I believe that if you go to places on the day and the exact time of something happening, whether it be a death, an accident, a tragedy, you can get more responses, more activity then. And I think I've proven the paranormal to Christy by doing that very thing. So that's probably why she brought that up. Has anybody else, I'm very curious, has anybody else experienced certain dates being a trigger for events happening? I'm very curious about that. But in the meantime, anything else on Facebook that we need to address? I know Danette says we've done a lot of museums with triggers. Already there, and we have also used triggers in homes. I've still yet to get a discernible difference between the two.
Danny said we use toys and such if there is a known child entity around, but rarely have they been effective interacting with it, in my experience so far. I'm sure results vary case by case basis.
Right. The whole toy thing, it seems like a good idea, but it's just hit or miss. A lot of people believe that spirits are a lot of times children. I mean, don't you guys hear stories more so than not about children haunting a location? It's very, very common, right?
Right.
So in that case, people, will set out toys, and I don't know what to think about, you know, children being a primary stat in what causes hauntings. I'm not sure about that, but I think that putting toys out there is definitely worthwhile, because if that's true, if children are haunting a lot of these places, putting those toys out there should be more of an incentive to interact with you. So I advocate that.
Christy also said, I also think that certain seasons can trigger also.
Well, let's talk about Halloween, right? It's widespread belief that Halloween is a time where the veil thins. Okay, All Hallows Eve is a time where the veil thins between this world and this plane and the spirit plane. So that is very true if you want to put belief into that. And I do believe in that, just because I think it's possible that if a large group of people believe that that's possible, it'll just happen based on that. But I'm not sure if the actual position of the Earth in relation to the sun and its orbit, as it's tilting in a certain way, causing a certain season to happen. I don't know if that causes anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I don't know if it's psychosomatic, if the culture and the belief in that causes people to have more experiences. I think that would be an interesting thing to research further.
Isn't that what we're trying to prove on Saturday?
We're trying to prove on Saturday with the world's largest ghost hunt that if everybody in the paranormal field collectively investigates in unison, that we will become a conduit for things to happen, like the metaphysical stuff. If we all meditate, if we all focus on connecting with spirit all at the same time at these haunted locations, then it's going to elicit more response.
But isn't Saturday like the fall equinox or something? It was a specific date. That's why they chose that date.
I'm pretty sure the fall equinox is October 21st. Am I not right? Let me Google that, because for some reason I'm second guessing myself.
Holy crap! Jess just grew facial hair.
Did he? Yep, September 22nd. That's fall equinox, so it's already happened.
It's a specific. They made it that date for a reason. I don't know what reason it was.
I feel bad for not knowing that, but Google says fall equinox is Saturday, September 22nd, 2018.
I don't know.
So that's happened already.
Right.
So maybe since it's the 22nd, that would make that that would make last Saturday the equinox, right?
Yeah. Last Saturday was the first day of fall. But I know it's a special date of something going on in the universe.
If anybody knows the significance of September 29th, as far as metaphysically speaking, let us know in the comments. Anything else over on YouTube before I go into this topic, Jess?
Well, I had to take over for Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry. So. That's right. I'm so used to doing that.
I'm not sure where you left off. You already did the shout outs and everything, correct?
Right.
I know there was a question here. Someone had asked about Can a person be a trigger object? I'm sorry if I can't find the
That's
the
okay.
name here.
We answered that.
Let's see. Truth Paranormal said dates and music can be a very powerful trigger object.
I believe that's true.
Let's see. I believe that's it so far. Unless you want me to scroll up some more.
No. That's good. I just want to make sure that we weren't missing anybody, because I know the minute I don't read someone's comment or ask a question someone's asked, they're bummed, because I'm bummed when that happens to me.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to miss anybody either.
All right, so if we miss you, write it out in caps. Say, hey, don't skip me again. All right, guys, I will get back to you in a moment.
Right.
Okay, so it looks like you guys are on the right page when it comes to trigger objects. You know what's going on, right? Even I've seen some interesting answers in there, especially from Christy. And like I said at the beginning of the show, anything can be a trigger object, even if it's not physical. So with that being said, let's talk about some things that I have tried to do over the years. Lunar phase is one of the things I've researched extensively. And it's not really an object like we discussed, but it's a phase of the moon. It's a time. It's a date. So whether I have researched solar activity, seismic activity, geomagnetic fields, you name it, and pretty much any environmental thing I've taken a look at. It does seem that the full moon and the new moon cycles do have things going on both those times, but in order to do the research justice, I need more than just me doing it, because I don't want to feel like my research has some type of bias attached to it. Like, I feel like I'm being objective, but I want to see if others are getting the same things from the same locations during the same times. So that hasn't happened yet. As far as objects, we use devices like REM pods and shadow detectors to be triggered. Okay? Just like the Boo Buddy. So let's talk about that real quick. And please keep the comments and the questions coming, because I want to get back to you. I want to know what you guys are doing and what you guys think, because that's what I think makes this paranormal community great, is bouncing all this off each other. So we use REM pods a lot. We use EMF meters a lot. Only certain kinds, though. We use shadow detectors, motion sensors. Okay, all those things can be triggered by things, and we want them to be triggered anomalously. We don't want them to be triggered by us or by animals or some other type of false positive caused by some glitch in the device. So if all that's good, we try to set them up in locations that we think are hotspots. So are these devices effective? We sit them out there and we kind of show them. Like, the general rule of thumb is we sit it out there and say, hey, I know you may be from the 1850s or whatever, but if you touch this antenna, these lights will light up and these sounds would alert us that your presence can be detected by the device. So if you can do that, please do that if you want like to know if we can detect you. So that's what we try to do. I think that is a very common way to use a trigger object. We set up trigger objects in places where entities really don't know that they're going to trigger them. And if you read Paul Browning's book, I believe it's entitled Thinking Outside the Box. I'm sorry, Paul, if I'm wrong about that, but if you want to read Paul's book, I can send you the PDF. He provides it to anybody on the show that wants to read it for free. So what he says is, a lot of times you go into a haunting and the spirit is very timid. It doesn't want to interact with you. It almost behaves like an animal afraid that it's going to be preyed upon. Or it acts like it's a entity that is afraid that you're going to go in there and try to make it leave. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't want to interact with you. So you could set up stuff, leave the location, and monitor it. See if it'll trip any objects, trigger any objects, show up on as anomalous readings on your data loggers or devices. So I think these fall into the category of trigger objects too, because we're trying to get an object to trigger. Okay, outside of that, we're going to see if we're going to try to personalize the trigger object a little bit. We're going to try to research the location. We're going to try to see, okay, we believe Uncle Jeff is haunting this barn. And Uncle Jeff loved to smoke tobacco. Okay, he, grew tobacco, harvested it, and he smoked it, chewed it. He loved it. So we're going to use tobacco in this barn for a trigger object. We're going to get a big old fresh pack of Red Man. We're going to get a pack of Camels, his favorite pack of cigarettes, and we're going to put it out there and see if that will elicit or give an incentive for a spirit to interact with you. So that's an idea. You can set up other objects that could trigger if something comes near it. You can set up things to collect environmental data to see if there's any anomalous fluctuations there around the trigger objects. Another thing that we have not discussed yet is money. There was a certain location we did not too long ago this year that we thought that putting money out would trigger. That happened a couple times. We did it at the Speakeasy in Harvard City, and we did it at the Sanford Center in Moundsville, West Virginia. And Moundsville, West Virginia was a school. So near the cafeteria area, I think Derek Schreiner put down a $5 bill to see if anybody would come by and snatch it. Maybe they forgot their lunch money or whatever, and they snatch it so they can buy some candy with it or whatever. So that, I think, is a good idea. We were at the Speakeasy, and of course, anybody that was haunting that particular area in the building would be interested in money because they want to buy illegal booze with it or whatever else they're selling there that they want. And we were actually told by Dan Allen that might be a good idea to do. I'm pretty sure that's what he suggested. So money is probably a really cool trigger object. If you haven't tried that, I would recommend trying that because I think that's very interesting. Anything going on YouTube or Facebook with the comments? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Danny wants to know, he said, do you feel mimicking an emotion, the activity may be exhibiting, create better interactivity, not in a provoking way?
Yes. There's this thing called error cues. They're called other things too. But I think that you can do emotional cues. We'll talk about error cues in a moment. But emotional cues is interesting because if you think that you have an empathic connection at a location, if you feel certain emotions coming across, if anomalous emotions, you go into this building or you go into this home and all of a sudden you feel sick or all of a sudden you feel sad, maybe you could try two things. You could try feeling remorse and empathy towards somebody that you know has been sad and kind of reach out with those emotions. Or you could try feeling sad yourself, trying inviting in that sad feeling in. Maybe you could try feeling happy to see if you can attract happiness, some type of happy energy. I think that's a really interesting thing to experiment with. Very, very interesting. Anything else?
Let's see. Shane Rossum said trigger objects are like bait and fishing. You don't know what will work, so you keep trying different things until something works.
Yep. But I think that there's some type. I don't know if it's really guesswork. I'm sure that fishermen would try not to be offended by that. I think depending on the time of year, the type of depth of water they're in, so on and so forth. I think that there's things that you can look at and consider when trying to choose different trigger objects. So it's not like it's not 100% guesswork, but there's definitely guesswork involved. I will say that.
That's all I got.
All right, thanks for those comments and questions. I appreciate it. How about on YouTube?
I got two questions from Scott Carter. First one is, do you think the moon affects spirit energy more than an empath sensitivity?
Okay. Do you think that the moon can affect an empath sensitivity, or more affect a spirit more than empath sensitivity?
I think he's asking which one affects spirit energy more, an empath sensitivity or moon effects.
I'm not sure. I am not sure. I am not going to try to measure that. I don't feel confident in my 5 years of field research. I haven't taken a look at that. I think that the moon can affect empaths. I think the moon can affect spirits. I think they can all affect each other independently and all together. So that's a tough one. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. I do not have an answer that I'm confident in giving on that, but maybe that's something that we need to look into. Sorry.
Okay. His other question, I think this is going to be a yes in my opinion, especially after experiencing Gettysburg. But do you think reenactments can trigger a response?
I think they can. I think a lot of people has tried, and sometimes I do think they're successful. If you're a fan of Resident Undead, then your answer would be yes, because they do that every investigation. They do these things called ripples, which are error cues. And what error cues are is you can dress up in the period clothing or the relevant clothing of whatever time period or location you're investigating, and you try and reenact a moment that they would be familiar with, or maybe a scene that actually happened that you know very much about through the course of your research. So, if anything can trigger something to happen, especially if it's residual, yes. I think if you're trying to trigger some residual energy, something that recurs over and over that's stored in the environment, or an actual parallel that has a bridge into another temporal dimension, yes. So I think we should be trying that, and I think it can work. Is there huge supporting evidence of it? Probably not. I don't have any. I haven't seen any, you know, really huge supporting evidence of it. But the anecdotal evidence and the stuff that is put on TV and the stuff that is put out there, it hasn't been peer reviewed. So I think it's possible. What do you think, guys? Josh, I know you think it's possible, right? Because
I do. Well, not just Gettysburg either. I mean, like you said, Resident Undead. They do. I would actually like to try that sometime. Just reenacting something and getting it or seeing if it spikes activity.
So can you play Santa Claus for us this weekend, pretty please?
Is Santa Claus relevant in?
He's relevant to everywhere, Josh Bender.
in September.
Yes.
I do have two more questions that popped up here. Paul Welch, he says, we speak about the moon a lot in the paranormal. Do we feel that the sunrise time frame in the morning might increase activity?
If the moon can, the sun can. There is no evidence to suggest that it does not. And I mentioned solar activity earlier. The amount of solar flare and solar, radiation, I think has an effect. And the reason I think that has an effect is because of our magnetosphere and how radiation affects that. There is scientific evidence of little magnetic portals popping up in our magnetosphere that allows radiation through. And some paranormal researchers believe that these little pockets and holes in our magnetosphere could be portals too. I don't know how true that is, but it involves the sun and the Earth's magnetosphere.
Okay, and the other one, excuse me if I mispronounce this, but is it buzzard or bizarre?
I think Jess pronounces it Bozard.
Bozard?
He hasn't corrected us, I don't think.
Bozard with a U. He says, do you think that a paranormal investigator that has passed, that knows about the things that are used, would be easier to contact?
There has definitely been a history of that in the paranormal field. The first thing that pops up is the spirit comm in the 1970s. Forget the professor or the engineer's name, but the engineer passed away. You can Google this, by the way. The engineer passed away, and the predecessor to this guy's research used his device to contact the guy who made the device in the afterlife, and he helped him further develop the device. And of course, this experiment was not replicated, and it was surrounded by controversy. But in theory, of course, I believe that. Okay, for example, say, Josh, if I die before you, I'm going to give you a code word. The code word is deadlight. If you do a spirit box session and you ask for a sign from me, you will only validate a response that says deadlight and nothing else, because that's our secret word. No one knows this word besides me and you. I think that is probably the best way to validate something like that. And you can have several code words if you want. You can, do whatever you want, but to control a rigid response like that, I think is probably the best way to do it.
Now, when you've talked about, ITC before, when somebody's looking for a certain word or name or whatever, and you're trying to make these sounds into that word, you're looking for that that key word.
You're talking about pareidolia?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to try to eliminate pareidolia, of course, when you're doing it. Now, something can sound like deadlight and coincidentally come across right when you ask for it. The chances are very, very low, but they could happen. So, replicate. Try to say, okay, say that again, say that again, say that again. So the chances of happening coincidentally dramatically increases if you ask for replication.
Scott Carter said Houdini never came back to communicate.
That's right. I do want to make a point about that. If Houdini died and wanted to make contact with somebody and have it publicly published that he did, why would he not? Because he spent most of his life yearning for this and debunking people who claimed that they could. I have a possible explanation for that. I don't believe that all spirits have the ability to communicate to the living. I believe that some have a choice. They're faced with a choice. They're faced with the choice to no longer return to this realm, interact with this realm. I think it's different for everybody. I think they can choose to stick around. They can choose to go. Maybe when they choose to go, they can choose to come back. But not all have the choice to come back, and maybe not all have the ability to come back, either through spirit guide or on their own. That could be a possible explanation. But the fact of the matter is, we just don't know why Harry Houdini has not come back and validated the afterlife. But I think it would be naive and selfish to say, since he did not do that, that there is no afterlife. Because Scott said himself, he's experienced loved ones coming back to him. So, Houdini, if you're listening, Scott, he wants a phone call, dude. He really needs it. Anything else?
Not on this side, but I think it's kind of interesting to, what determines who gets to communicate or come back. How do you know?
I wish I knew, Josh, and I don't think I'll ever know until we die.
Like a lottery drawing, or
I just think that it's okay. This is the best way I'm going to explain this. When you slip into that conscious state, it's like you're in a dream state. Sometimes you don't know that you're asleep. You don't know that you're awake. You don't know that you're you. Okay, if you research near-death experiences, a lot of the cases, they do not remember who they were. And when they come back, especially in coma, they did not know who they were, and they had to relearn who they were, and they had to relearn to speak, and sometimes through coma. But in the cases where they're not coma, there's a lot of times they retain their identity. But I find the cases that talk about when they lose their identity, and even the concept of speech during the NDE is fascinating to me, because that state of consciousness does not retain the memory of that. But they still get sensory information, and it still has memory associated with the experience. So it's really interesting.
That's all I have over here.
Okay, not Jess, but Missy.
I've got a few things. Chief Lib Paranormal said, and your confidence going into the location as a,
Mhm.
you know. He also said he'd be the dead hooker.
Okay,
and then-
we'll write that down for later.
And then about 5 or 6 said Deadlight is awesome. And Christina Cano said, I agree, some choose to be here and some come and go as they please. And some can physically move things and some can't. Some can only affect our senses.
Some can only come in our dreams.
Christy said, so she has a question. She said, so if they don't know who they were after passing, how can they come back to their loved ones and say their names?
That's a good question. So I believe that, in my personal opinion, that we go through a process of a self-evaluation. That's kind of like the light flashing before the eyes, the whole, all my regrets, all my deeds and misdeeds, thing that happens. And then, you either go down a corridor, you're embraced by a bright light, or you're embraced by this field of beauty, or in some rare cases, it's hell-like. Okay? What's really interesting about near-death experiences is when you study it is there's a lot of it that's not culturally based on their belief systems. Some are, but a large majority of them aren't. Okay, so that means if you live in China and if you live in the U.S., you can have the same exact near-death experience without cultural influence or belief. So I find that interesting. But to address the question, if you lose memory, I think that is a point of no return. Okay? I think some people choose to retain some of their memory, and that puts them in a different state of being in the afterlife. I think to fully cross, you have to let go of all of it. Enter into the oneness of God, whatever you want to say, the singularity, and then you can be either reincarnated or just be with God for eternity, whatever you believe. But if you're reincarnated, I believe that you carry karma or some type of memory with you, just not so much the identity. Now, in rare cases, I believe that you can bring in identities with you into reincarnation, and that would explain past life experiences that children have a lot if you research those things. So they believe that they were a World War II vet. They're like that notorious case where a child thought he was a combat airplane pilot for the Navy. I believe that's possible. But for the most part, I believe that we ultimately let go of a lot of things that we remember. But I think, for those that do remember and come back, I think that's a different state of consciousness in the afterlife. I think there's a large spectrum of things that could happen, not just one thing or the other.
Okay, and then I have one more, which I think is a good question. Danny asked, could it be the gatekeeper effect? Could the gatekeeper effect have anything to do with the ability to try and communicate? Maybe the gatekeeper effect prevents them.
Okay, so what he's saying is that there is somebody that rules over the communication or the bridge between the living and the dead, and that can impede or inhibit communication. Is that how you're understanding it?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
how I understood it.
I don't know about that. I don't give that a whole lot of thought, but it's definitely a possibility. I don't necessarily personify a gatekeeper as an entity that either allows communication or contact with others that are past or not. How I view it is it's a mechanic. It's something that happens or not happen based on how they cross, how they died, what they choose to do after they died, so on and so forth. Like say, for example, in the process of self-evaluation, they can't let go of something, or they regret something, or they, something happens in that process. If they get that process at all, because I think in some cases they don't even get a self-evaluation process because the death happens so quick. The proper chemicals don't release in the brain to allow that right before death. But let's just say it does. Let's just say you're not ready to go. You want to stick around and see if the wife, the kids, the friends are going to be okay. So you will linger. Okay? So I think that has something to do with hauntings. Now, for my dad, for example, when he passed suddenly, I don't think that he got a self-evaluation period. He was dead before he hit the ground. So I think that he experienced death in a different way that's not quote unquote natural. Not that I'm going to pretend when I know it is natural, but based on my belief and my speculation is that it really, really depends on how you pass, how the process is, and how you deal with it after. Not everybody has spirit guides. Not everybody has help. So I hope that answers this question.
Okay, and that's all I have for right now.
Matt Benton says there has been over 1,300 near-death experience cases researched from the book Evidence of the Afterlife, a lot of similarities from most of them. And what's crazy is, that's right, I'll get back to you guys on the comments. What's interesting about that is, and I've researched it, there's a lot of things that the culture does not dictate the experience. And I find that very, 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 very interesting, because what that means is it's not brilliant. You can kind of rule out or try to rule out speculation that it's the brain just having some kind of dream state or hallucination, but they're not actually dead. It just happens right before they die. So I think the more we try to research that and the more we get that anecdotal evidence, the more we can be confident that, hey, this is a possibility. Caesar asked the question, Josh, if you want to address that.
Yeah, Caesar says, what do you guys think about the afterlife investigations?
Oh, that's not ringing a bell with me, but it sounds familiar. It sounds like a study done a while ago. Let me Google it real quick. Afterlife investigations. Whoops. Sorry, I'm having to Google. I need to jog my memory. It's school experiments. Oh, I don't want a YouTube. I want literature. The Afterlife Investigations 2011, narrated by Britain's leading investigative journalist Donald McLintree. I guess that's how you pronounce it. This award-winning film presents 4 never-before-seen specific or scientific investigations into life after death, the skull experiment for 5 years, a group of mediums. Let me blow this up. A group of mediums and scientists witness more phenomena than in any other experiment in the history of the paranormal. Okay, this is something produced by Gaia. If you're not familiar with that, so I don't know about this, but you have sparked my interest in it. There's a lot of interesting things that's come out of Gaia, so I'm going to have to take a look at that. And sorry, I cannot comment on that. Why don't you can elaborate what you know about it and tell us what you think. And maybe I will get back to you. I will comment on this YouTube live stream after it posts, and you can come back to it after I've watched it. I'll make it a point to watch that this week and respond to you better. Let's see. He may. Okay, I think we're good right now, right?
Yeah, that's it for YouTube.
Okay. All right. Oh boy, this can get heavy, guys. I know we kind of got into the whole belief in the life after death thing, but I think it's relevant because the more we understand life after death and what conscious state you're in and what the possibilities are, the more you can understand trigger objects. And a thing I'd like to say for this show is the trigger object's not just the Boo Buddy. It's not just a REM pod. It's not just a cigarette. It can be anything and everything. That's what we need to do as paranormal investigators. We need to go out there and do the best that we can to log all the information we get. And that is that's the hardest part out of all that we can do, is we can have a collection of data. Can I go back to this investigation 4 years ago and pull up every single thing that happened, all the factors involved, the weather, the people, everything? The chances are it's not going to be very well kept because it's so difficult. It requires meticulous record keeping and a lot of passion to do very hard work for no return other than trying to find an answer to this thing we call the paranormal. So, with that being said, I urge you guys to try your very best to use all the trigger objects you can possibly imagine, the ones discussed on the show, and hopefully other things that you could possibly think of. The time of day, the time of year, the moon phase, the time, where the sun's at, where the stars are at, what's going on in the world and popular culture and the news, because I do think that a trigger object can be the planet. Okay, it could be a collectiveness of things going on the planet, with the people, with the ecosystem, with animal life, with the geology. Okay, just think for a moment. If one little thing can be something, then anything can be something, and anything can be everything, and everything can be something. That's a mouthful, but you have to consider all these possibilities when you're trying to understand the paranormal, because let's just face it, the weather affects so many things that we're aware of now. It affects our physiology, it affects our psychology, it affects our culture and our ecosystem and everything. Everything seems like it's a cycle and a part of this one organism with many moving parts. Oh, RJ, did you get that, Missy? RJ's got a comment there.
I got it. I was just waiting on you to shout me out.
I shouted you out.
He said, my son had an NDA last June after suffering a traumatic brain injury.
Oh, man.
He remembered laying in the ER and his brain began to swell. He remembered a falling feeling, followed by cold. He said everything went dark, and then he was surrounded by what he described as stars. He didn't feel alone and was brought back rather quickly, 1 or 2 minutes. He was released from the hospital. He took on a completely new look at on how he saw his life. His senses were heightened.
Wow. Wowzers. Okay. I just recently watched a short documentary about this guy that got mugged and just bashed in the back of the head. And after suffering that brain trauma, he turned into an OCD math freak, where everything he looked at was geometry. And he went on to go to school to further his education in mathematics, and he found out that he was this thing called an acquired savant, which is you acquire these abilities that savants have to do extraordinary things that others that cannot do. He says he's having issues with computer sending too early. That's okay. I think we got that comment pretty good. That's interesting. You should definitely consider having that logged in the near-death experiences. There is a story collection place. You're going to have to Google it because it's been years since I've looked that up. But I think it would be a good idea to have that logged, just in case someone else has had that or has not had that experience.
Justin, I have a comment and 2 questions.
Okay.
Caesar commented, said, yeah, it's a very interesting documentary, especially with the pose as life after death, but I'll let you take on that.
Yeah, I sponge all that up. I'm definitely going to watch it, I promise. And I'll get back to you on it. Maybe we may even talk about it again.
Question from Buzzard. He said, do you think that if it is ever found out for sure what happens after you die, that it would affect how people live their lives?
I don't see how it wouldn't, man. I mean, some people are dead set on no matter what they hear or what is presented to them as fact. Some people, maybe a lot of people, just don't care. They're dead set in their ways. Me personally, I feel like if, very strong evidence was presented to me as fact, saying, hey, this is how life after death is, whether you believe it or not, I feel like it would impact how I would go on. And to speak on this before we end this show, I think you can draw a parallel to a death of a loved one, whether it be your child, your mom, your dad, your brother, sister, whatever, friend. My dad dies in 2011. He died of a massive heart attack at the age of 54 while I was at work. Had out of the blue. Didn't know he was having that big of an issue with his health. It just happened. He's dead. Now he's gone. You get all the regret and all the bad crap that follows that. But how it impacted me was I wasn't prepared psychologically and spiritually for that to happen. I really neglected that part of my life. I just procrastinated it. I didn't focus on it. It wasn't important or meaningful to me. But after the fact, it was. And what I think we can focus on now is not so much having to have concrete evidence of what is life after death and what's out there beyond death. I think we need to focus on what's in front of us, what we don't have, and what we have. What we have, we don't appreciate enough until it's gone. We have these regrets that we cannot do anything about once these people have passed. So I think what helps shape our spirituality and shape our belief in life after death is those things, being aware of those things in the moment while the people are here. You know, let's take Josh for example. If I felt like Josh was going to die tomorrow, God forbid he does not, but if I felt like he was, if I pretended like he was, what would I say to him? How would I treat him? How would I feel? What would I do? If everyone lived their life like that, they would live a totally different life. So I think that if we just do that, that would heal the world. That would heal ourselves. That would change who we are as a culture, as a person. So hopefully that fits into that question. And I don't think it really matters about what actually happens. What I do think that matters and what we can do something about is what we're dealing with right now while we're breathing. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I would definitely change some things if I knew what was going to happen.
Right. What about you, Missy? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I think about it all the time.
So I like the exercise of just saying, okay, what if this? What if I lose this person? I can't talk to him ever again. Or maybe if I feel like I can talk to them, I have a spirituality intact, that will help even in the process of coping and dealing with their death. Because in my dad's scenario, I wasn't. So it took me a long time to get to the point where I feel like I could deal with it spiritually, emotionally, and all that. So hopefully that answers the question, that gives some insight to you guys. Thanks, Josh, Jess, Missy, Derek, all you guys for helping me each and every night with the comments. You make the show way better than it would be otherwise with just me sitting here trying to juggle it all around. I know you work very hard and you do everything you can for me. And I want to let you know that words don't express how much I appreciate it. So hopefully that gives you some insight on my appreciation for what you guys do each day, every live stream, every investigation. You guys are fucking awesome.
We know.
Can you do one more question, Justin? I got one left.
Absolutely. I can do as many questions if they can throw at me right now.
Glenda Holding says, I'm not sure about spirit guides, but why would some have guides and others not?
Okay. The reason I believe this is, why would some people have friends in life and some don't? I believe the same as, I don't believe we're promised anything in life and we're not promised anything in death. And without complicating the answer that I give for you, that is simply how I'm going to leave it. Is that it?
Yep, that's all I have.
All right, guys. I'm going to put it in the show. Just stand by. You guys have been great. Fantastic audience tonight. Fantastic comments and questions. You guys are awesome. You guys are a great paranormal community. I know we share the same paranormal communities like Elite Paranormal Society, Alex Bob's fans, I mean, I can't sit here and name them all, but I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in and having this discussion with me each and every week. It means a lot, and I think together we're strengthening the paranormal community every time we do it and making it better. Hopefully, you guys agree. So, thank you. Before we end it, we are going to. Whoops. Let me find the right button. Oh, there it is. If you would like to see this content stay where it is, if you would like to see it grow, become even better, if you want to support us beyond watching the show, liking it, sharing it, you can through Patreon. My YouTube monetization was pulled from me. All this stuff is very time consuming. It's very expensive. So if you want to make sure that it stays where it is, you want to support the show, you can do so through patreon.com/support interface death. The link is in the description of the video and in the cards on YouTube. All these people make this content possible. They're in the credits of our live streams, they're in the credits of our video productions. They get access to exclusive content that others don't. So Christy Brown, Clay Bornman, Matthew Jackson, Matt Benton, Danette Goldtrip, Landon Wells, Gwendolyn Guthrie, Jessica Bias, RJ Murphy, Liz Coy, Bill Davis, and Scotty Fox. And we do have a new Patreon. Let me look that up, because I do this every time. I don't want to forget them because they just jumped on board. So give me one moment and I will shout them out right now. It's a paranormal group. They didn't give me, it's Paranormal Response Unit. That's who it is. Or Response Team, Paranormal Response Team. So we'll go ahead and add their name into this big, huge conglomeration of names. Paranormal Response Team. There we go. There you have it. You're on there. So thank you very much for these people you see on the screen. It means a lot to us that you're able to do that. So thank you very much. Until next time, you guys take care. Tomorrow we have Necromancer. Daniel Everson will be joining us for an interview on Necromancer at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Interface Death's YouTube channel and Necromancer Live Show Facebook page. So check that out. Make sure you click the get reminder and notifications of that live stream. And if you're a first-time viewer, stick around for the video promotions. As always, I will see you next time. Take care. Make sure if you're in the area and you want to investigate with Interface Death at the world's largest ghost hunt, get a hold of me. The tickets are on our social media. If you can't find them, just message me and I'll get you the links. They're on sale. They're being reduced leading up to this investigation. So if you're in the Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky area, or if you're willing to travel and want to go see the haunted old Blackford County Jail, let me know. Stick around for these video promotions. You guys are in my heart. I love you guys very much. We'll see you on the next one. You take care.
What was that?
I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe in this room.
Generally, Justin, when you guys investigate, do you just take long pauses, wait to see if you hear things, observe everything that's going on?
It depends on the location and our experience with the location. So in this case, at Waverly Hills, since we've been here before, we've heard a lot of stories, done a lot of research, and investigated. We typically like to listen a lot because we hear the coughing, we heard it last time, so we didn't hear it again.